It's Katrina from the Alluring Bead Boutique, and today I'm going to be continuing on with showing you guys how a couple of different ideas for how to make more creative and unique looking earring findings. So in the last video I showed you guys we did a review on making these cute little oval ear wires, and we added the carnelian swirl drops that we made in a different wire wrapping tutorial I did a couple of weeks ago. And basically, they look really pretty. I love the way this came out. And today what I'm going to talk to you about are some other ones. So like, I have done a couple of videos and tutorials on showing you guys how to make earring findings out of ball head pins. I'll throw some links up to this. I showed you guys how to use your soldering torch to make the balled end on there. And then we rolled them up and made some pretty cool looking earring findings. Today we're going to talk to you about our paddled pins. So here's a pair that I already made, and these are in bronze. So I paddled out the ends, filed them off so they look really pretty and even, lightly hammered, give the hammer texture to the paddle end, and then form the earring wire on the other side. Here's another example of something I made recently where I paddled out some sheet metal, or actually it was a piece of rectangular wire, and I flattened it and paddled it and flattened it and paddled it and filed it down and got these two shapes here. Then I took some sterling silver wire and I hammered the paddle onto the end like this and soldered it here to the other component. Then I took a jump ring that I had made and cut it in half and filed my ends and soldered it here on the inside. I haven't yet formed the earring part here, but you can see how that's going to work. So this is just an example of paddling the end of a wire flat to make it a lot easier to solder. When we're making a paddled head pin, we're going to do it quite differently. You can see here that I have a pretty sharp edge of markment here on these little small paddles. We're not going to do that today. We're going to paddle these out pretty smooth. So in the last video, I showed you guys all the tools. There's also a corresponding blog post to this particular tutorial, and all the tools will be listed there. You're going to need some flush cutters and a ruler and some 20 gauge wire to begin. I cut these wires flush on both ends, and I cut them at 2¼ inches long. This is 20 gauge copper. You're going to definitely need your chasing hammer for this and the bench block. You're going to need a file, and I'm just going to be using some of my cheaper files. I've got these I just got at a hobby store. It's got a flat file and a half round file. And they work pretty good for smoothing things out pretty quick because they're fairly coarse. I have some assortment of round nose pliers, multi-step looping pliers, wrap and tap, and a couple of pairs of chain nose. Don't really need all of those, but mostly what we're going to use are the hammer, the bench block, the flush cutters, file, and we'll probably use these multi-step loopers to form the earring itself from the paddle that we make. All right, so we're going to work these one at a time. This is kind of a tricky little process, but it's not that hard to do. You just have to take your time and practice. The trick to it is to paddle both sides of the wire as evenly as you can. You don't want to hit your hammer here at the edge on your wire, or you're going to wind up with this little sharp looking place right here. See? That's because I was holding the wire here and hammering it right there on the edge of the bench block. So we want to avoid that with this project. What we're going to do is we are going to paddle. So we have approximately 2¼ inches here. We're going to paddle about, I'd say about 1 inch of this out. And what's going to happen is we paddle, the wire is going to grow. So it's going to become longer than this 2¼ inches here. We're going to do them one at a time. And we're going to use the chasing hammer. So I'm just going to try to get myself in a comfortable position underneath this camera. and go for it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start by paddling down. Then I'm going to flip the wire over and paddle the other side. It's close to even amount of times on both sides. If you see the wire start to curve, like this one's starting to curve, you can move to a different position on your bench block and draw the hammer in the other direction to try to draw your wire around in that direction too. And we're going to keep going till we get a pretty decent shaped paddle. You can see how I'm drawing the wire out as I flatten it. And just flip back and forth, and don't hammer at the edge of your steel bench block. So there's a pretty decent looking little paddle. You can go as thin as you want. I'm going to come up a little bit and work upwards just on this little piece above to make it look more uniform. So now when it starts getting really, really wonky looking, I will put it on its side like this and just gently tap it. It's a little tricky to do on camera because I don't have enough room between my hammer and my camera. But you can straighten it up just a little bit like this. See? So it's just a little technique. It's a little tricky. And like I said, it does take some practice. So just take your time. We want a nice little paddle about 1 inch long. It'll be narrower up here and wider down this way. So let's see how we're looking. So we're pretty close. We're not quite 1 inch yet, as you can see here. We've got, we are too. We're right about exactly 1 inch at the narrowest part right there. So I'm going to lay this one aside. I'm going to get my other wire. Now I'm just going to do the same thing. What I'm going to try to avoid is having one much wider this way than the other one. So you're going to have to check your work back and forth. So we're going to start on this wire. We are going to start up here and then come this way. Roll it over. And you just do the same exact steps that we did. We can pull it, make sure it stays straight, put it in a different position if we need to, draw it out. Now I'm going to check to see my 2 wires, how they look. I can get them in the same spot. This one still needs to come out just a little bit, a little wider and a little tiny dash up. And they don't have to be perfect, but you want them to be pretty similar. So now I'm going to do that little straightening that I did earlier. And this part's a little tricky. Let's see what we got. So they're looking great on this end. This one needs to be just a little bit more spread out wide this way. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to focus on that area. I'm going to stay away from up here where everything's looking good. I'm just going to focus right there at the tip. And then I'm going to come in and do a little tiny dash of straightening like I have been doing, until I get it the way I want it. And then the rest can be straightened up with the file. So now let's take a look. So now those look pretty good. All right. So now if I wanted to add a little bit of texture to these other than the pretty little hammered look, I can get my texture hammer. And what I would do is I'm going to swap out one of these heads for something different. Like this little diamond-shaped texturing head. You just put it in the cap like that, with the texture side facing out of the hoop. And then you just screw it back onto the hammer. Get it nice and tight. And you'll notice I took the steel bench block off, and I'm just using this little rubber bench block right here. Then I can just take and strike this metal ever so gently with this texturing hammer. You can see I'm getting quite a pretty little texture on there. You can also you can use it on the steel bench block. It just makes much deeper cuts into your metal, and you really need to be careful. When you're hitting metal against metal against metal, you're actually moving the metal. You can make it longer and make it thinner. When you're using metal against something softer like this rubber, you're not going to change the shape of the metal other than for adding a light texture. Like that. So let's go ahead and bang on this other one just a little and give it a little texture. And I'm just doing a light texture. You can, like I said, you can do it on the steel and really add some deep texture to it. I'm just going to hit it with this hit it gently with this one. And then I am going to take and make sure what I've got going on here. So this one got a little bit misshapen when I tapped it on the metal. So to remedy that, I am just going to use this rawhide mallet and try to tap it back into shape along that sharp side like this. And then anything else we can straighten up with the file. All right, so now we're ready to give these a nice little file on the end. So I just cleaned up my work area just a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my file and I am going to try to smooth out any rough edges that I might have on this wire. And you can see right there where I misshaped that end just a little bit. I can use this file to actually remove some of that and make everything look a little straighter. But you just take your time, file your sides smooth. When you come up here to this end, you can actually take this half round file and you can come around and round the corners just a little bit. And get rid of any sharp edges that might be there from where you were hammering. And you just work until you get the two pieces as close to identical as you can get them, and you're satisfied with your work. So I'm just going to go ahead and file mine for a couple of minutes until I get everything the way that I want it, and I'll meet you back and show you guys how to make the earring. So I've got everything filed up and evened up, and I'm ready to make these into an earring finding. So I'm going to hold my two little paddles at the same place, you know, right here. So they're the same length on this end. And I'm going to use these multi-step looping pliers again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the smallest barrel here, and I am going to put it on the top of my paddles. And I am going to roll these paddles up into a U shape. Just like this. Until the two wires come around and they touch pretty close like this. If you have to get your fingers in there and pinch them, that's fine. But this is what we want, is something that looks like this. And we do want them to come back and, you know, pretty much touch the base wire. Like that. Okay, so now we're ready to form the the actual bend that goes, you know, through the ear. So now I have these like this. I'm going to flip them around this way so that the parts where the metal is touching here is facing downwards. I'm going to bring my multi-step looping pliers in, and I'm going to use this biggest barrel of my multi-step loopers. I'm going to grab the 2 earring findings so that the folded over part is right above, or right touching this smaller barrel. And then I'm just going to use my fingers like we've done before and just roll these over the larger back barrel, just like that. Bring them around to form the earring shape, like this. Before you let go, still trying to hold everything, you know, in the same position, like this. Now's a good time to even up the ends of these 2 wires if one's a slight bit longer than the other. Get those evened out. Bring your small barrel back in. Put it on the back side, right here. And just give a little bend to the wire like that. Just make a little angle. And so now, here's what we have for our earring findings. Not too shabby. Now, once again, we want to wire harden this part where we formed, you know, our earring wire. But we don't want to misshape this part here, so make sure you hold your finger over that so you don't hit it with the hammer. And then just come in here and wire harden all around this upper curve. Flip it over and do the same thing on this side. And like I said, if you want, you can take your chasing hammer and flatten this. You know how you see that on some earring findings where the curve is flattened. Because we already have this part flattened for our little catch, for our, you know, little gemstone here, I think I'm going to go ahead and leave this part just round and just proceed to wire harden as much of this earring finding as I can wire harden. And keep turning it over and doing both sides. We'll do the other one the same way, protecting this part here so you don't hit it with the hammer. And flip it. And continue to harden until you get it to the resistance that you want. Test it. Test it for spring. And there's what we have for our earrings so far. Because I had to trim the ends down here just a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and take this little wire rounding cut burr, and I am going to work those until they're nice and smooth and somewhat rounded. Let me take that brass thing off. And you'll just work it and then test it with your finger. See if you feel anything sharp. And work both earrings the same until you have a nice smooth end on the part that goes through the ear hole. Okay, so now we just need to put our gemstone drop onto this beautiful little paddle pin here. So in order to do that, we don't have to move this off to the side. We're just going to come in with our pliers and gently pull this up like this, just to create a small opening right there. I am going to take my drop and slide it right on. And you'll notice that these drops here have already, because I didn't use coated tarnish resistant wire, you'll see that these are a little bit tarnished. You can get these little pro polish pads online. I'll put a link to my Amazon affiliate for them. And you just cut a little piece. It's big enough to use. You don't want to use the whole thing at once because the tarnish, like, seriously comes off really quick and gets all over these little pads. And then you could just rub the tarnish right off of your copper. See the difference? There's the back side. Here's the front side. And it just does a really good job of cleaning up any tarnish on, like when I make my jewelry, it sits around until it sells, obviously. So I don't worry about polishing it every week or two or anything like that. I just wait until it sells, and then I go ahead and polish everything up. And sometimes I'll go ahead and if I want the look to stay non-tarnished and bright shiny copper, I dip it in Protect Clear or brush some Protect Clear on it. But a lot of people like the tarnish. So basically, you know, it's an option. You can choose to use tarnish as a, you know, as variety and patina and, you know, texture, look and all that. Then we're just going to take our little pliers and we're going to come back in and just gently close that little paddle down. Try not to misshape it. So there's one. It's really cute. And we'll just clean up this one real quick. You can see how much tarnish those little tiny pads pick up just with a few quick rubs on the wire. And sometimes with metal jewelry, I'll cut a little square of this and put it right in the packaging when I sell the jewelry. And I put a little note on the invoice that explains how these little pads can clean the jewelry really easily. And this tarnish also cleans off really easily with a little bit of Dawn dish soap with ammonia in it, which, you know, ammonia is used in these electronic jewelry cleaners and things like that. But anyhow, there's a lot of ways to clean tarnish off of metal. And I like to go ahead and polish those ones up. You'll notice I didn't polish it off of these because I think it adds to the look with that carnelian. All right, so now I've got to do the same thing. I need to just gently bring my pliers in like this and just brush them upwards. Just to loosen that up just a little bit. Just enough for me to slide my wire wrapped loop right down into position. Then to squeeze it gently shut, I'm just going to squeeze towards the top. And I mean it super duper gently to push that back around. You can even use your fingers just to pinch it to where it comes back down and touches the base like that. And that just secures the stone. And so there we have these cute little textured paddle pin ear wires that we added our simple little wire wrapped drop beads to. And so now we have two really adorable pairs of earrings. So I hope you guys like this video tutorial, and that you will experiment with making some of your own earring findings. I love the fact that you can just take artistic wire that's available in your craft stores locally and a few simple tools like a hammer and a bench block, a file and some cutters, and just go to town making these beautiful, unique findings for your jewelry. It adds a special touch. It adds value to your price because basically you have taken the time to create something extra special and put that finishing touch onto your jewelry. All right, so that's it for today. I hope you like these tutorials. If you're interested in seeing something like this right here that does involve some soldering, you can let me know. You can send me a message. Use the contact page on the alluringbeadboutique.com if that's the best way to get a message to me. Or you can go over to my Facebook and talk to me over there. Go to the Alluring Bead Boutique Facebook page. You can message me there. You can just message me in the Bead Mat group. All right, that's it. I hope you have really got a lot from this and that you will enjoy adding some special touches to your finished pieces. I want to thank you for watching and have a good day.